Editor of SC Biz News. We're the publishers of the Charleston Regional Business Journal, GSA Business Report in the Upstate. In the Midlands, we're the Columbia Regional Business Report, and we also have a statewide economic development magazine called SC Biz News. We appreciate your support in this event, and we appreciate you being with us. We couldn't do it without you, and we also couldn't do it without our sponsors and partners. And we're going to hear from a couple of those, and then we will come right back and begin our panel discussion on cybersecurity. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Dr. Sean Hayes of the Computer Science Department at Charleston Southern University, and we would like to welcome you to this Charleston Power event on the global pandemic and regional cybersecurity. CSU is preparing students to become leaders to address the cybersecurity challenges faced by our world and locally. We are proud to be one of only 14 institutions that have an ABET accredited program in cybersecurity, and the only one in the southern United States altogether. In the Old Testament, Nehemiah was tasked to build a wall around Jerusalem while surrounded by enemies. His builders worked with a trowel in one hand and a sword in the other, and always ready for a fight. Many IT professionals, I feel like, are similar to Nehemiah, trying to eliminate the current vulnerabilities while trying to handle attacks from cyber criminals. CSU trains students with the abilities of hackers, but ultimately as problem solvers, with the moral foundations to go into a world ready to create and defend for the good of others. There are always vulnerabilities to find and address, and we are excited to train students with the ability to help and strengthen our community. We'd like to thank you for joining us today, and I look forward to participating in the learning with this panel's discussion this morning.
Hi, my name is Armin Asadi. I'm a managing partner with the Verizon Business Group. I lead an organization that works with small and medium businesses across the Carolinas. Specifically, our coastal South Carolina team has been working with business clients throughout the pandemic on assisting them with collaboration tools, increasing the communication effectiveness as people work remotely, helping them with potentially contactless transactions for their employees and for their customers to make it a safer environment, all under the goal of helping to lean operational costs wherever available to ultimately help you business owners and business drivers on growing revenues. If you'd like to learn more about any of the products and services and how Verizon can partner with you, please use the chat field. We appreciate the partnership and we appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today.
All right, welcome back. What you're about to see is a live event. This isn't pre-recorded or scripted. We're in a studio in North Charleston, South Carolina, with our live stream with one of our panelists and with one of our panelists in the studio. If you've been to our in-person events in the past, you know the way that these are really good is when we have audience participation. And there are two ways that you can participate even though we're not in person. The first is to go to your YouTube, on the right, go to your YouTube page in the chat window and send a question to our producers. They will respond and give them to us, and we will talk about them in the studio. The other way is to have a conversation among yourselves. We found that through these live stream events, a lot of our audience members like to talk, and you'll be surprised about the connections you make and the information that you get. So today we're joined by Brad Powell, who is the co-founder and director of channel recruitment for Hook Security. Brad, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks so much, Andy.
And from his home office in Fort Myers, Florida, we have Dan Pfrommer, who's the security specialist manager for Verizon Business Group. Thanks for joining us today, Dan.
Yeah, you're welcome. Looking forward to it.
All right. Well, let's get started. I'm going to ask the first question of both of our panelists. I'm going to start with you, Brad. So each of your industries has been impacted by the coronavirus, like all of us, in many different ways. So, but one thing you guys have in common is that you deal with data and keeping it safe and advising businesses. How has the pandemic affected your operations?
Well, thank you so much, Andy. It's a pleasure to be here. And I would say, to answer your question, it's affected us just like everyone else. We were working in a downtown Greenville office, and we actually all went remote. And that was a big challenge, a different scenario for us. But data is something that we do keep up with, right? And so we have to ensure that we protect it, and we have the precautions and all the tools that we need to ensure that our customers' data is kept safe.
And Dan, what about you? How has the pandemic affected how you do business?
Yeah, that's a great question, Andy. So let's talk a little bit about Verizon, right? So we had to figure out how to move a massive workforce of over 100,000 people to a work from home environment, right? So over 70% of our workforce is still working remote. This includes sales reps, all the way to network engineers, so how do we do that safely and still ensure security? So we have a lot of security controls in place, a lot of checks and balances before you can connect to our data resources, right? But one of the biggest safeguards our company has put in place is just user awareness. So a lot of videos, emails, mandatory trainings on how to secure your work from home environment. Right. So I get that most small businesses, they can't afford these fancy and expensive security controls and software, but awareness is free, right? So if you're moving to that type of environment or changing up your operations, a lot of this stuff is just best practices that you can Google. And eventually, as you send it enough times to your employees, they'll get the importance eventually.
But that's a really good point. I like the awareness is free model. People have to access their work, though. Doesn't that cause some issues when you don't control the environment as a security professional? Don't you have some surrounding issues with that?
You do, yeah. So again, it kind of goes back to the security controls that you can afford and put in place for your business. There's lots of very cost-effective items on the market that can still help secure that data in transit, data at rest, and also provide your employees with a optimal working experience from home.
Before so many people were working remotely, I think 100% of our staff, which is not the size of Verizon, of course, is still working remotely. But digital security was important. Has that shifted, like with so many people going online for business? Has it become more important, Dan?
Yeah, so I think the short answer is yes, right, in my humble opinion. But the biggest change that I have observed since this whole thing started is that the bad guys have increased their efforts to prey on the innocent and unknowing, right? So they'll always play on the current situation, insert major event here, and play on people's emotions and stress. So the numbers are actually staggering, somewhere around a 400% increase in complaints to the FBI, right, in regards to cyber attacks compared to pre-COVID. So another quick stat that just scares me is that social engineering attacks have jumped from 20,000 to 30,000 per day since the start of COVID, and ransomware attacks are up 800%. So the new way of doing business has only made it easier for the bad guys to do their job.
So Brad, what do you do if you get a ransomware attack? What do you advise one of your clients if they walk in and their website's down and they got an email from themselves probably or it looks like it's from themselves, that is asking for a bunch of Bitcoin to release their data? What do you say?
Well, you need to first, make everyone aware, right? And you need to think about it. You need to have special people in place to help you with these things. That's why we have cybersecurity insurance. That's why we have security awareness training, like Dan was talking about. You need to have these things in place because these things are happening. And like Dan was saying, these bad guys are getting better and better at manipulating people through technology. And it's important to be aware, right? And so if you are, in fact, you get ransomware, You really need to have the right people in place, smart guys like Dan, smart insurance companies that can help you get through this, because at the end of the day, the bad guys are going to want money. Not necessarily say you need to pay it, but sometimes you do. And so it's just it kind of depends, right? So
How would you make that determination about whether you should pay it or not? Do you have someone that consults with you to help you determine that? Or does it depend on whether you have backups of all your stuff?
Absolutely. You need to have all these things in place. You need to have special people that understand, hey, what do we do? How do we put this back in place? Smart guys like Dan can help, Verizon, if something like this did happen. Gosh, if you have the backups, at least you can rest a little assured. But it's scary stuff out there that we're dealing with.
And is there anything creative or unusual that you're seeing these days that you weren't seeing before the pandemic, or is it business as usual, just at an elevated level?
No, I mean, to piggyback off what Dan said, I mean, these bad guys are getting better and better. And as you can see, the pandemic has intensified these things. I mean, one thing that we say at Hook Security is, the risk is now at home, right? And so you have these great corporate cybersecurity fortresses around your business, but then when you go home and now you're on your public network, you are vulnerable. And the bad guys know this, so they're doubling down on that. And so it's important to keep your people aware.
So tell me more about the insurance product. What is this an insurance policy I can buy for?
Yeah, so I don't want to get too off the course of where my wheelhouse is, but yes, that you can buy an insurance policy that can cover these things, as far as even as down as, hey, when do we make the announcement that we were breached?
Gotcha.
All those things that come into play.
Okay, all right. I didn't know that product existed. Interesting. So to get back to the small business angle. And not just small business, but what if I don't have a lot of money, but I do want to keep our data safe? Is there something with limited resources that I can do? Is there some off-the-shelf product, or is it more about making sure that my people know what not to click on, or how do I do it if I'm a small business and I'm suddenly thrust into this situation where I've got everybody working remotely and I don't know who's got VPNs or firewalls or whatever? What do I do?
So I can take that one, Andy. So again, it goes back to best practices that I mentioned, right? Which most are easy to do and extremely cost effective. There's a saying that I use a lot. If you can't afford a security solution, then you definitely can't afford a security breach, right? So from a mobile perspective, most security solutions are a few bucks a month, right? So compare that to the potential loss from a data breach, not including brand reputation damage. It's pretty much a no-brainer. So quick example of that, a recent customer of mine suffered a $500,000 loss due to a phishing attack and a negligent employee. They still couldn't justify the cost of a solution to prevent another attack, right? Which is most likely going to happen. So round two, so to speak, for the bad guys. So my guess is we will be talking with them again in the future. So just small investments here and there, big difference.
What about you?
Yeah, I'd piggyback off that and say, cybersecurity should be a business decision, right? And it needs to be something that all business owners, big, small, need to think about and implement. And, kind of what Dan was saying, awareness training is one of the low-cost things that you can do. And obviously we do it at Hook Security, but at the end of the day, you could have a great cybersecurity fortress with all the great tools. And a lot of cybersecurity companies are moving towards AI, which is great, and I love it. But at Hook, we are really focused on HI and human intelligence and ensuring that while there are great technology and tools, the human brain is really needs to be engaged on what's going on. So you can have great tools that could be circumvented, like Dan was saying, by one person clicking on a link that they shouldn't have. But if they were aware, that might not have happened. Yeah,
that's interesting. I read recently that there was a cybersecurity conference, and they surveyed the attendees, and 85% said that what's going on now with all the remote working is going to cause permanent and significant changes in the industry for you guys. Now, entrepreneurially, that's opportunity. But do you guys agree with that? Do y'all think that we're at a point where we're not going to be going back to the office the way we were, and we're going to have to concern ourselves with this remote security?
I absolutely think that things are changing. I do think that with the pandemic, it does allow us to look at things differently. I certainly think that now companies and business owners can look and say, wow, I can be just as productive at home as I was in the office. And in some ways, my people are more productive at home. So I do think a lot of companies are looking towards that. Now, we are a small business at Hook, and we do have offices now, but I do think that it will play a big play into our industry.
Gotcha. What do you think, Dan?
Same thing. So I piggyback off what he's saying. Again, it's going to change everything going forward. I know that large businesses are now looking like Google and Facebook and all of them are saying, hey, you know what? Let's just have our people work remotely permanently. Give them the choice.
Right.
Savings on office space and things of that nature. Like a company like Verizon, there's huge savings, right? So they got to weigh those balances. Is it worth it to take the risk versus the cost savings? That's up to each individual company.
Yeah, definitely. Do you, when you're looking at a lot of what y'all are talking about is internal and some of the psychology of your employees, but what about customer-facing activities that require a customer to either enter their data or allows them to, they have access to your database through an account? Like, how do you connect and relay this information to your customers if you're like a retailer, maybe a Target?
So, repeat the question one more time, Andy.
Well, if you're in a business that requires customer-facing activities digitally, so many businesses are just doing business online now. We're not all Amazons, but a lot of us do. How do you educate your customers to make sure that they're doing what they need to do to keep your data safe and their data safe?
So, there's a lot of protocols that we do internally, but externally as well. So I think it's just ensuring that that your customers understand, first and foremost, when they come on as a customer of yours, that we do take their data security very important, and the information is protected. So I think it's just a matter of having that conversation up front, ensuring that it's legally bounded. But that's how I would answer that question.
Okay, very good. So it sounds like, and one of the things that you and I talked about before was about the psychology of these data breaches. People seem now to almost be accustomed to getting a data breach. We just hear about it in the news so much. Has a tolerance for our data floating around out there made us more vulnerable or more resilient?
I think we could kind of say both. I think as more and more of these threats come out and these breaches do happen, we learn new things. But as you know, just like in business, the bad guys, they're organized crime, right? And so they are growing their business too. I think it's important to always keep them abreast, right? But yeah.
Okay. And if I'm a company and I think I've gotten a data breach, what's the best way for me to make that public? How do I know, or even should I make it public?
Well, it just depends, and I think it's something. Again, I'll go back to the insurance policy. If you have these policies in place and these procedures in place, when you have a ransomware attack, you know what to do. Right? Because you say, I do this, this, and this, and then we tell the public what happens. So yes, I do think it's important. If you've been breached, you have to tell them. You have to tell the public.
And what about you, Dan? What do you say to someone who's been breached about going public with the details?
Yeah, so there's actually a more formal process, Andy. So there are a lot of laws and regulations around the notification process and timeframes, but they're kind of per state, so to speak. So, for example, Florida requires that a confirmed data breach be reported no later than 30 days after that determination has been made. But South Carolina, on the other hand, it doesn't define a time frame for reporting the breach. It clearly states that notice must be made without reasonable delay, right? So there's some gray area there. But as far as the notification process, you would need to look that up to understand your state's guidelines for organizations that need to be notified.
And so is it a matter of notifying the government and letting them know that this has happened and that there may be a potential? South Carolina had an incredible large data breach themselves, which is one reason I'm asking about that.
Yeah, so there's so many different regulations and organizations that need to be notified depending on your state's laws and regulations. I can't name them all, right?
Sure.
The government is kind of a broad term, but there are some that you need to notify, and I highly advise that you talk to someone that can help you weed your way through those gray areas, so to speak.
And going back to the psychology component of this, how do you test? An employee state of mind is clearly important, and we're all under so much stress right now with the pandemic, and a lot of businesses have seen contraction. But how do you test for an employee's state of mind to determine if your employees are actually being as aware about these issues as they could be? How do you test for that?
I'll take that, Dan. And I would say, one of the things is, again, awareness training, because at the end of the day, these bad guys are manipulating end users through technology, right? And so it's important that the brain is taught to recognize when it's being manipulated. So, and really what we say is it's the amygdala part of the brain. Then that part of the brain houses our threat and response capabilities. And literally that is our training. When we look to train end users, we look to train that part of the brain. I think it's important to infuse fun and creative videos and non-punitive approach to your training. And I also believe that it has to be continuous, right? It doesn't just need to be like one pen test, and see how vulnerable we are. It needs to be a continuous training environment and platform. And the reason I say that is because the bad guys continue to evolve and they continue to get better. So you need to find training that continues to evolve with the bad guys and keeps your people aware of what they need to be looking out for.
Yeah, so I agree with what Brad's saying. For example, here at Verizon, right, they do regular phishing tests via email. Some of these are so realistic from, hey, you're expecting a package or your business cards are coming or you toll receipts or toll violations, right? When you think, oh, I drove somewhere, I must log in and pay this, right? So a lot of those very basic things that you can do, like people like Brad's company, I'm sure they do this, right? And there's a lot of online services cost effective that allow you to help train your users, right?
Oh, very good. So has extended working from home remotely kind of made securing data more difficult given how fragmented our workplaces are right now? Is that something that you're seeing a lot? Is this going to be an ongoing problem that we're going to have to deal with?
Yeah, I think this type of work environment is here to stay. I got cut off a little earlier, but I was saying is that big companies, Google, Facebook, they're allowing their employees to make permanent choices if they want to work from home. Same thing with Verizon here. They've realized, hey, there's a lot of cost savings. We can get rid of some of these offices we're paying the amount of money of and continue to have a work from home workforce. Because at the end of the day, we're all still being productive. We're generating revenue. So why not?
Definitely. All right, this is a great discussion. We're going to take a quick break, catch our breaths, hear from a couple more sponsors, and then we'll be right back to continue the second part of our panel discussion.
Move forward faster with network solutions from Comcast Business that can help you pivot easier with remote collaboration tools. Work safer with managed cybersecurity. Connect faster with bandwidth flexibility and software-defined control. And stay agile to scale up, scale down, adapt to change, and bounce forward.
All right, welcome back. We are back at our live stream event talking about cybersecurity. So all of the conversations that we talked about earlier about the number of individuals, companies who are going to be permanently changed by cybersecurity issues, is made me realize that there's probably going to be a need for cybersecurity professionals in a big way in the near term and the long term. Is there a workforce opportunity for some smart individuals to get into this profession? Is that something that's in demand right now, or is it not? Am I misreading that? What do you guys think?
I would say yes, it's definitely in demand. There is a shortage, and I don't know if people are looking at the job descriptions and saying, I don't really want that job, or if there really is just a shortage, right? But yes, cybersecurity is a very interesting. It's very fun. It's evolving, and believe it or not, you can get really creative in this industry. And so yes, there is a shortage, and I think there's great opportunities for individuals coming out of college and looking to get into a field. Cybersecurity offers a lot of great opportunity, and I'm really glad that I chose it.
What kind of courses, what kind of study, what do you need, what kind of aptitude do you need to have to be able to do this? You almost have to be a detective, right?
Dan could probably talk a little bit better on that than myself, but there are a lot of certifications that you can get. There's a lot of courses that you can take, but I'll let Dan talk a little bit further about that.
Yeah, so my view is a little different, right? So I think you have to have those fundamental understandings of technology today. So whether at the network level, the data level, the cloud level, the ultimate security person has to have a lot about a lot, right? It's a very deep subject. So, and a lot of times companies, they want this person to fill these huge shoes, but they're not willing to pay for it. So you got to be willing to open your pocket. You kind of get what you pay for, so to speak.
Right, and does the industry typically pay well? Because a lot of our companies are looking at workforce development. Is this an industry where you can make a decent living if you're a young college student looking for something to do with their lives?
Yeah, I think that's kind of subjective, right? What's a good living to any, right? I think that opinion differs. So yeah, I would say, the starting type intern positions, not bad, but when you work your way up the ladder, more experience, it can be very lucrative, especially if you open your own consulting company.
Gotcha. So what about the cloud? A lot of companies I know either were migrating to the cloud or they did the migration in a matter of days instead of years. Are there any concerns for companies who are suddenly shifting to doing networking and having all of their data in the cloud? Like some of them just copied and pasted their stuff into a cloud solution. Is that good enough? What about the cloud?
So I think when you go to look at a cloud service, right, let's take it back to that. So lots of companies are willing to take the cheapest cloud service they can find just to save some money and get the job done, but they should be evaluated, right? So if it's a public company, you need to be asking them for their SOC 1 and SOC 2 compliance reports or their PCI certification or even a BAA, right? If they're not willing to do that, then you probably should take your money somewhere else. So you need to have someone advise you on what's the best way to transition to the cloud and reputable vendors, so to speak.
Gotcha. All right. Speaking of vendors, if I'm looking for a banker or an accountant or a lawyer or a cybersecurity firm, what kind of cybersecurity questions do I need to ask? Because it seems like that may be part of the discussion now. Is if I'm hiring a business to do business with my business, I need to consider their cybersecurity, perhaps. What kind of questions should I ask them about their business? What do you think?
So go ahead, Brad.
Well, I was going to say, go ahead, Dan, and I'll follow up on you.
Yeah, that sounds good. So you need to be, again, if it's a public company you're looking to do business with, they have a lot of regulations and compliance that they have to adhere to. They should be able to prove to you that they're doing that, right? With these, again, SOC 1, SOC 2, reports, it goes on and on. But that's something you need to take in consideration. We at Verizon, not to plug this, but we offer solutions that can monitor your partners, right? Do an assessment on that partner's security controls. Okay, so if you know that they're not up to speed, do you really want to do business with them? So there are ways of vetting your partners these days.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And, I think it's also one of the things that we look at is even like the NIST frameworks, so that we are aligning our company internally so that when we are working with, a managed service provider and some of their end users, we can honestly say to them, hey, here's where we fit, here's where we internally have our policies and procedures, and to ensure them that, hey, when you come on with us, just like Dan said, you are going to be protected, and we take this seriously.
All right, very good. When you look at access, even sometimes even a smaller or big business, we kind of tend to want to trust everybody who's coming into our workplace, even you employees, because it just makes things more efficient. It makes it easier. Is there an inherent danger in giving people too much access to too much data? And how do you decide?
I would say yes. You have to, first of all, admin access can be dangerous if it's in the wrong hands. So I do think that there, again, coming back to policies and procedures internally, there always has to be, hey, we're going to change our passwords every 30 days. Hey, when you log on, you need to connect to the VPN, right? All those things need to be in place. So.
Does a small company need a VPN if they're working remote? What's the advantage of that?
Absolutely, and I'll let Dan talk a little bit more about that, but yes, absolutely.
Yeah, there's no question it absolutely needs a VPN, whatever form of VPN that is, whether it's a hardline connection back to the data center, if it's critical sensitive data, or if it's just a regular VPN via a client on your laptop. That's the minimum that you should be putting in place. Other things are identity services to verify you are who you are, like two-factor authentication. You got to have two things to prove who you are, right? So it's data and data you have to be able to connect to that back to the business.
Are two-factor authentication and VPNs, is that an expensive solution, or is that something that can be bought off the shelf? Or, I'm looking at VPNs, some of them are offshore. Should I have one in America to be sure? Does that actually matter? How about in reporting?
Yeah, so a lot of two-factor authentication can be provided by the manufacturer of whatever solution you're purchasing, right? A lot of them have that baked in from the very beginning. They even offer clients to install on laptops and your mobile devices, right? There are some free ones out there. I'm not going to plug them. Do your own research. There are some free ones that do integrate to a multitude of VPN solutions today. So it can be very cost effective if you do your research.
So we have a question from one of our viewers this morning. Tiago Cherubino is asking, how vulnerable are mobile devices when it comes to cybersecurity?
Yeah, I can address that, right? So that kind of falls into my wheelhouse, pretty much does. So I talk with clients every day, multiple clients about their mobile environments, because most often that is forgotten about. If you think about it, those mobile devices today are probably more important than desktops and laptops, because if you have people in the field, that's how they're communicating, generating revenue, getting work orders, whatever that looks like. I think everybody can agree those are just as important as the other things we use to do business today. Why wouldn't you protect them as well? You buy antivirus for your laptops and desktops, mobile devices. But one of the biggest threats kind of goes back to, it's been around for years, is phishing, right? phishing attacks are still one of the most prevalent and successful ways the bad guys are taking advantage of the mobile world today. Good question, Tiago.
Can you explain what a phishing attack is, just for folks who might not understand exactly what that means?
Yeah, that's where the bad guys try to lure you into clicking on a link to most often associated these days with things like Office 365. What business doesn't use Office 365 today? So the bad guys know the popular things. You get a text message, right? Instead of just through an email. Email systems are very good at catching these things these days. But what about text messages? What about social networking apps? What about push notifications in your Candy Crush game, right? That they're trying to get you to click on. So those are one of the biggest threats today. You need to be aware of them. Think before you click. And then also take a look. If you do click, look at the website, observe it, look at the details. Does it really look like what it should look like? Are there any misspellings? Things of that nature. Okay, so be aware of that.
So basically, trust no one.
Yeah, zero trust.
Zero trust. That's
a term used often in the security industry.
Gotcha. We got another question from another viewer. Brian Heights says, what are some of the new and most common cyber attacks you guys are seeing right now?
Well, I can speak on one here, and a lot of what we're seeing is the bad guys are coming in, right, and they're breaching, and they're kind of hanging out, right, and they're kind of observing what's happening, right, and trying to pick that perfect time to maybe send that phishing email like Dan was talking about, when they know that, hey, there's a wire transfer going out tomorrow, and we're gonna send a fake, switch the routing numbers here. So yeah, I think it's a crazy time right now.
Yeah, that is. What about you, Dan? What are you seeing?
So let me set the stage here real quick. So we have Verizon, right? We have a lot of access to a global network. So we're constantly monitoring for these types of things. So, we have a lot of the raw data and hard facts to provide. And really what we're seeing today is a majority of breaches are caused by true hacking. So these are out-of-date operating systems that are vulnerable, missing critical security patches. Other things are just caused by human error, right? You can't fix human error. Oops, I left the default password on our database server. My bad, things like that. Obviously, social attacks, so that's credential theft or known as phishing attacks. And then, the other one I would say is very popular is just malware. Again, that, by the way, that knockoff Candy Crush game your spouse loves, yeah, it's really a virus and they're stealing your data. So I would say those are kind of the things that we're seeing that are very popular today.
So is cybercrime, does it pay well? I mean, there's so many different things and it takes so much energy. You just think if these guys would just, I don't know, do what you do, that they could probably make a living without having to do crime. I mean, it must have a certain percentage that actually pays off, right?
Yeah, if you don't get caught.
Right.
So yeah, it can be very lucrative, in the millions of dollars for a very small amount of work. And a lot of the times they farm this stuff out to other people. They pay other people to do the dirty work and I can collect. So yeah, it can be very lucrative. But I think Brad and myself, we chose to go the other way. We chose to fight for the good guys and help people that are in need.
So is there are most of these in other countries, or is there also a cyber criminal contingent in the U.S. as well, or is that just irrelevant at this point?
I think it's kind of irrelevant, but if you look at the statistics, Andy, most of the attacks are coming from nation states on the watch list, right? China, Russia, Brazil. Not to say that they're not here in the U.S., but majority of them are coming from those areas.
Yeah, and I'll say one thing too is that it's organized crime. These guys have CEOs, COOs, CFOs that are working together to take down small businesses through this. So it is a very serious thing going on. So I like what Dan said.
How important are backups?
Probably one of the most critical things. And by the way, it's one of the things that has the most difficulty for small businesses, right? What I mean is, are you sure that backup ran last night? When you come in and discover that your website's been taken over, you better pray that it did. Okay, so back to the kind of the ransomware thing. The backup didn't happen. You might want to consider paying for the ransom, right? So it kind of depends on each situation. But yeah, backups are critical.
And but backups are also difficult because we have a spider web of data right now. So I guess you probably need a consultant to look at your systems and to figure out what you need to back up, because you probably don't need to back up every single thing you've got. You mentioned the app that my spouse is playing on her mobile device that might not be a legitimate. Does that create any vulnerabilities to my home network? So say my wife is playing that Candy Crush game on Wi-Fi that I'm also using to access our financial data for our company. Is that a risk, or is that really not that big a deal?
It really is, right? So it's very rare that they actually hack a phone, right, and have so to speak, backdoor access to it, unless you're the Jeff Bezos of the world or some type of high-profile financial target.
Right.
But the bad guys don't really care about your pictures of your 8-year-old son's birthday party, things of that nature. What they want is, what does the device have access to your point, Andy? So
Sure.
if the device, if they download that Candy Crush game that's stealing the data, they're looking for the credentials to access that data that's in the cloud or wherever it may wherever it may be. So yeah, there is a vulnerability there.
Gotcha. You're smiling. It sounds like you've seen this before.
Well, my son, he's got a Switch, so it's one of those Nintendo Switch, so same thing. I'm always thinking about, all right, let's reset his password and those kind of things, right? So that we're constantly thinking about it.
I bet you're a great parent to have around when one of the kids trying to play a video game. You're like, Dad, I got to change my password again. Well, looks like we have another question coming in from one of our viewers. Many homes have the Internet of Kim McManus, who's here in our studio, said many homes have the Internet of Things devices, smart devices that I've got Alexa in my house. Like, what should people look for to determine whether or not it's safe to purchase and set up something like that in your house?
I think staying with reputable brands. Right. We know there's a lot of things on Amazon that are a lot cheaper than Alexa that get the job done, but do we really trust them? Part of our Verizon training is to secure your work home environment is to shut off those smart devices because it's still, I'm not a conspiracy guy, but they might be listening. What are they doing with the data? Right. So I'm not a big fan of those things, but yeah, the Internet of Things, you really don't know today who's behind it, who's programming it. Did they think about security when they created this device? Maybe, maybe not. So if we look to do some of those things in my home, I stick with reputable brands.
Yeah, I agree. You have to do the research, and you have to ensure that whoever you're purchasing does take cybersecurity seriously. I mean, prior to working with Hook, I was in physical security, right? And we could sell great surveillance cameras to a home or a business, but if we didn't take cybersecurity seriously and think about, okay, is this manufacturer taking this seriously? Because if they're not, we could sell them this great camera or this great, video system, and it could be circumvented, right? Because someone didn't understand what to click on or not to click on that attachment. So yes, it is important to do your homework when it comes to those, mobile devices at home.
So I'm going to ask a question that you guys aren't going to want to answer. What's the most secure mobile device you can get?
So there's actually statistics around this, right? We produce at Verizon what's called the Mobile Security Index Report. Go hit it on the Google. It's an annual report that looks at these things, right? Mobile data breaches. And what we've found is that Apple is a bigger target, that phishing attacks, they experience more phishing attacks on Apple.
Wow.
But Android is actually a more open source type of operating system, which really opens up more vulnerability. So it's hard to say which is more secure, but from a personal perspective, right, this is not speaking for my employer, I believe that Apple is a more secure operating system today.
Yeah.
Any opinion on that?
Completely. I completely agree with Dan on that and back that up.
All right, very good. So kind of want to wrap up here. You know, if I'm a small business and I want to assess my vulnerability, like what is my vulnerability from employees to end devices, maybe software architecture, applications, and apparently my children now have to also be part of that assessment because we're all remote. What do I do? What is the best way to assess my vulnerability and the exposure of my company?
So this is where I get my shameless plug, Andy.
All right, very good.
Here it comes, right? So you need to get with someone who actually knows what they're doing, right? They need to look. You need to have experienced people come in and assess your security posture and look for those problems. These are people that have been doing this a long time. Companies that I work for, we have many people just sitting there waiting to come out and meet with customers and look at things of this nature. So you need to get with someone that knows what they're doing, find a partner. Obviously, Verizon, we offer a lot of these solutions and services and can help with that.
Yeah, I would say the exact same thing. You know, it's so important to get good partners in your business. So everything Dan said, I would agree with, and I don't really have anything else to say about that. I think that's really great.
All right, very good. All right, well, I think we're done. I wanted to mention that we were supposed to have another panelist with us today, Jeff DeLong, the Chief Information Officer from South State Bank, and he got a flat tire on I-26 on his way down here near Somerville, and everybody here knows what that means. So he wasn't able to be with us today, but we'll get him on another panel in the future. But I also want to say on October 15th, we're going to be streaming our Roaring 20s event, which is going to be showcasing the fastest growing companies in the state of South Carolina. On December 3rd, we're also going to have, the Business Journal is also going to be honoring healthcare heroes for 2020, which is another streaming event. But stay tuned to the Business Journal, to our email products, print editions, social media, and website for more information. And thank you so much for joining us today. Brad, Dan, thank you for joining us and for giving us your expertise. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.